Welcome to the Net Profit Podcast with Ryan Kibler, your net profit CFO, helping business owners like you grow their net profit one episode at a time. And now your host, Ryan Kibler.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Net Profit Podcast. Today I am very excited. I've got Ari Rastegar with me. I am excited to have him on the show. A lot of business success from Ari, and I'm excited for the advice and knowledge that he's going to give today. So Ari, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the Net Profit Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I like what you do, supporting small businesses as they grow. And a lot of times, they don't get the opportunity to have a CFO to help them understand their finances. So have someone that has your background to help people in that range of the, $1 to $20 million revenue to have more sophisticated controls and thought process. I really admire. So I'm happy to help you and talk with them.
Yeah, love that. Well, I want to give you the opportunity. Tell my audience a little bit about you, a little bit about your backstory, and kind of where you've gotten today. Because today, by I think most people's standards, a lot of success in your life, right? And author, obviously published author, right, and won some awards there. So just give us a little bit of background, a little bit about you, and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Sure, I appreciate that. So a lot of failure. I'll start with that. And so right now, we're in this place of the world is changing so much. And in fact, the title of my book is called The Gift of Failure. And the first line is, I hope you fail. I hope you fail a lot. And I think it's very important as business owners. And, it wasn't long ago that I was making $2.86 an hour delivering pizzas at Doubleday, work at a community college, getting myself through Texas A&M, and then on through law school and practicing attorney and running a big entertainment company, and then running a real estate private equity firm that has spanned 38 cities, 13 states, 7 asset classes, 2 countries. Our investors are public pension plans, insurance companies, firefighters, high net worth individuals. And I tell you all that to say that, I've gone through this process. I've gone through the process. And, if you build everything we own today on the hundreds of acres, across Texas, Arizona, et cetera, these assets are probably valued in the future in billions. Okay. But I can tell you that the fundamentals of what make a great business person, in my opinion, and how you run a business, whether with $1 million or, $5 billion as we're working, principles still hold true. In fact, fundamentals is what wins championships, right? And, quite frankly, I'm from the vantage point, as Jack Welch used to say, who I love so much, was the CEO of GE for many years. If the sales department isn't the whole company, but if your whole company isn't sales, you don't have a company. So I think now more than anything, really focusing on how are you going to find your customer? And in real estate, real estate is a people business, understanding your tenants, understanding your investors, the neighbors, the communities, the cities they inhabit in. And I think these are tried and true pieces that, now more than ever, there's so many different tools and there's so much access to knowledge that you can be sitting from your advanced electronic device watching this podcast. And when I was starting, I'm sure I'm older than a lot of you watching, we didn't have that luxury. And so I admire the people watching that are taking the opportunity to whether watch this on YouTube or through the things I watch YouTube pretty much every day to listen to some of the greatest founders, business people, or various parts that I want to learn. So I think constantly learning and constantly adapting, because at a very high level, the world is changing at such a rapid pace, and us as business owners or business operators or employees working our way through to become business owners that are listening right now, there's never been a more important time to learn. And there's never been a more important time and opportune time to be able to learn and take the advice from folks that have really been doing it and find the little nuggets, discard the things that don't maybe help you directly, and implement the ones that you actually can.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, I've hosted this show for almost 3 years now. Started at the beginning of 2023.
Congratulations. Cool.
Thank you. One of the things that I love is just the great people that I get to interview and just be able to learn from myself, right? As we go through and do all these shows. And you said a lot of good things in there. I took some notes already of some things I want to dive into and ask more about. But let's start with one of the things I picked up on you talked about the fundamentals, right? Fundamentals really wins championships. And I think there are fundamentals that you've got to have in the business world, right, to really win. When I list that for you, I mean, what comes to mind from your experience?
Well, I appreciate the question. So, in the scope of this discussion, what I've seen on the shows that you've done, and I think you've done a great job, is there's some fundamentals around just revenue and expenses. And it sounds very, very basic, but you need to have, your engine when you're at that level, the level we've talked about of growth and bigger, is you got to drive revenue. You can't be scared to spend in an area in the right way to drive revenue first and foremost. And when that revenue starts coming, you have to play. So I think of one as offense and one as defense, is the way I look at it. So offense is you got to go shoot and put points up, drive revenue, make sales. Okay. But as that money starts coming in, you got to immediately shift gears and play defense, which means managing your expenses and managing your liabilities of what that looks like and being very prudent on how that money turns into EBITDA, for lack of a better, explanation, or net profits, or just profit in general. Let's say we don't need to get into the mechanics, but what's left over at the end of the day. And there's a way to do that where I think people are being aggressively cheap, for lack of a better word, which I think dampens the customer experience, which you want customers to keep coming back. Because you make that investment and you drive those sales, you're looking for repeat customers. You want people to love your product, to be raving fans, because raving fans create more revenue. They go tell other people, you don't have to spend extra dollars to do it, and they will bring you more. Nobody will bring you a better customer at a better cost per click, cost per dollar than a raving fan, a raving customer. And I say raving because they're going to go advocate for you, which means less marketing dollars, less expenses, more revenue without more expenses. Then on the other side of that is, as that money starts coming in, how are you thinking about that strategically? What is it taking to run that business, to run that machine? And again, this is, there's the science of success in a lot of ways of how this works. Then there's, the art that goes into how you balance the two of the ebb and flow of how to keep those customers engaged, how to create a staff that's excited, that's motivated, to have a great culture around what that is. And when it comes to your salespeople, certainly, and your operators, making sure there's synergies between both sides of that playing field. Because a lot of times I find the sales folks don't talk as much to the operational folks. The accounting department is not talking as closely with marketing. And I think as a business owner or within the business yourself, taking a leadership role and making sure these departments are talking, making sure they're getting to know each other, taking time to have lunch together, grab a beer after work or whatever your proclivity is, because a lot of times, accounting will look and say, why the hell did we spend all this money on sales? But if someone in sales could explain to them, well, this is why we did an extra $1 million and whatever. But I think that culture of getting the circulatory system of how the business works is very important now more than ever, because things are changing. But those fundamentals, I think, are tried and true at any business.
Yeah, love all those things. Yeah, I mean, where to go from there? There's so much in there, right? And I think I think one of the biggest things you're pointing there to at the end is just communication, right? Between departments. And I've seen it so many times where that doesn't happen and everybody's not on the same page. And like another big one I think is what sales actually sells and what they say they'll deliver versus what comes over to the operation side and how they understand they're supposed to deliver. And that
Right.
can create gaps there too.
And I think that's right. And as I said, sometimes the most obvious things, get glossed over. And I keep going back to that fundamentals, these fundamentals, just master those fundamentals. You look at Steph Curry, he shot 500 free throws every day of his career, for close to 20 years. You do that math, that's 3.5 to call it 4 million shots he's made just to make 3,600 3-pointers and be the greatest shooter in the history of mankind. But there's fundamentals that go into that. Phil Jackson will tell you that. Popovich will tell you back. And sports is an easy analogy for how that happens. You look at the San Antonio Spurs, it's super boring at times watching Duncan and those guys, but they won rings. And I think this is about getting to that next year, getting to that growth. And you made a point about communication, and you're right. But I want to take it a little bit further. And at Rastegar, we say hyper communication. not just communication, hyper communication. And that's in response to the landscape we're living, this technological landscape, this AI landscape, how things are moving and the accessibility. If you go back, back in the day when there's no cell phones, the time in which a response was acceptable from an etiquette standpoint, so to speak, but you can lose a customer in 1 second. Amazon Prime has made this instant gratification where either you win a customer, you lose a customer. It is instantaneous. And I think we've learned to do that in a lot of ways with our customers, but we failed more so within how we do that internally as a team, as a company, of if something is arising, address it immediately, nip it in the bud. If something's great, acknowledge it, celebrate it, repeat it.
Yeah, love that. From your experience, you just kind of brought up Prime, and I just want to ask, I mean, to me, it feels like right now with technology and the things that we have, the world moves faster than ever, right? The business world kind of moves faster than ever, and customers expect the same thing. Do you think that it's always been that way, or do you think that that's ramped up over the last couple of years?
Well, information technology by design grows exponentially, but it also accelerates exponentially. So over time, the J curve has begun to grow. And if you go back and you look to the Babylonian times, there was growth and there was innovation, but technology itself, as we've begun to hit that curve, the acceleratory factor has become exponentially faster. It will continue to till it's above my pay grade to how far
Yeah,
and how long, but I can tell you, yes, at the very least, it is accelerating. But we're also getting tools that can accelerate that. Chat GPT, I can tell you, I use Chat GPT
for
every day
sure.
for a variety of different things. And I think it is such a great use. Time they just got valued $1 trillion. They'll be public soon. And using that as a tool to accelerate your response time, your ability to do research as an employee from whatever level, from intern level up to CEO board member, but utilizing things that can accelerate your process, your research, your productivity, and then translating that into how you deal with customers, how quickly you write an email back, how quickly you respond, because there's so many things in the business world you have no control over. You can control to some degree your response time, how you respond, and the tools that you use. So not only thinking from the business as this disconnected entity that sits on its own, business is a function of the parts of all the people, the tools, and the technologies conglomerate. So empowering people to find tools to make themselves more efficient, more quickly, more streamlined, and then let that be a natural iteration into how they contribute to their business. And if you do that as a team, and that creates a synergistic effect that's greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, love that. I really think, and I love that you're using, chat every day. I mean, me too. I think, if you're a business owner out there and you don't have your team and you leveraging AI, I think that that's something that's here to stay. It's only going to get better. I think
It's a
that's a
failure.
mistake.
That's unacceptable. It to not be
Yeah,
using AI, at least in the term of using chat or Grok or like one of the tools you yourself, whether it's from using the Apple Intelligence, or if you're not using those tools, then you're foolish. Like
yeah,
it's not a you can't be operating and be a productive human in the free world, so to speak, when you have aside from if you have the luxuries of certainly being in America, I should say, and you have your four limbs, you've been blessed enough to have your faculties, so to speak, and you're in that realm, and you have a smartphone, and you've been blessed enough to have that luxury, not utilizing those tools is asinine.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. Yeah, very good point. I agree. And I think as business owners, that's easy to take for granted, right? Sometimes we get it, especially if you're the owner, you kind of get into the day to day, right? You kind of get absorbed by that and focus on what you got to do every day, and you don't think of things that way. But I would encourage everybody that's listening, kind of rewind, listen to the last couple minutes, all your limbs, all your faculties, right? That's something to be thankful for every day,
No,
for
it's
sure.
it's absolutely something to be thankful for. And so there's a hurricane that hit Jamaica the other day, Category 5. People are suffering, looking this stuff. I mean, there's so many places where we have to take a moment if we're able to view this podcast on a advanced piece of technology on our own time and have our eyes, our ears, and maybe it sounds corny to some people out there, but it's not to me. And so if we have
For
that, I
sure.
think we have a duty to utilize it. We have a duty to incorporate it into our lives, and most importantly, take all those things and contribute and give it back, whether that's in our personal relationships, as a parent, as a friend, as a daughter, son, co-worker, and the quicker, more efficient, more accurate than we can do that, we have a duty to do that.
Yes, I completely agree. Completely agree. I want to shift a little bit here, because I want to spend a little bit of time talking about your book, The Gift of Failure. And I wanted to give you an opportunity and kind of pull a couple concepts out of the book and maybe share with my audience a little bit. It is a New York Times best-selling book, right? So, yeah, is there a couple things that you could pull out of it that you would like to share here for my audience to kind of tease it a little bit? And then obviously I recommend they go pick it up.
I appreciate that. It was a it was an interesting experience getting the Wall Street Journal that day in print and opening it up and seeing the bestseller is certainly flattering to say the least. But the book is a conglomerate of many of the book's called The Gift of Failure. So it has just that. It's autobiographical in nature. It starts with failures that I've had in business, failures I've had in my own health journey, and through introspection in my own life, like what did I learn from it? And I can say that aside from anything else, back to the things that we can control, there's so many uncontrollables that are happening, so many things that are changing. And for me, one thing that I'd like to garner that I'm a huge proponent of, that with the high speed and this fight for attention, because the big companies, the Googles, the Metas of the world, they figured out the algorithm around your attention. That's really what it is. They're buying attention in some regard. The news understands this, entertainment, Netflix understands this, and there's a dollar amount that's above my pay grade of how they do that. But with that said, I fight for my focus. What can I focus on that's going to move me towards my goals? And using that muscle, training it to keep going back to not where the world wants to pull me, where I want to focus on, that's going to move me forward. And one of the greatest tools that I have learned in my entire life, it's thousands and thousands of years old, but it's called meditation. And there's various forms. You can look up Dr. Joe Dispenza. He does a meditation practice that's absolutely phenomenal. I recommend anybody in any walk of life that is doing anything that has any sort of their own issue of maybe with their own thoughts and tension or any type of stress will help. Transcendental meditation was founded by Mr. Maharshi Mahesh Yogi. I've been a huge proponent of transcendental meditation for many years. I learned about it from Ray Dalio, the legend himself. And so anything that you're doing, because meditation truly means to become aware. And meditation is about preparation for activity. It's not about zoning out and just relaxing on the couch. It is a true technique that you learn and we have measurement tools now to see the coherence that happens in the brain, the coherence that happens in the heart, that prepares us for activity, prepares us for work, prepares us for business. And I think in this day and age, when we are ticking and booming and talking all over the world, something that can bring some equanimity to the mind, to the heart, physically, and then go and take us back out in the world, I think we'll be more productive, more effective, and hopefully more happy.
Yeah, love that. I'm a firm believer that when you're a business owner, I think you have 98% of the answers that you need, right? It's a matter of being able kind of to have that time to yourself to really figure it out, right? And I think it's not going to happen when you're kind of trapped in that day to day where you've got everything going on and distractions and, cell phone and, you probably have clients calling you and things like that and email inbox and calendar and travel and all that stuff. It's very interesting that, that you bring this up and that's, one of your big go-tos because like I said, I think we have 95 to 98% of the answers. I don't know what the number is, but it's a good portion of what we need, right? And
I think you're right. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, no question, but I think there's a big gap between what we know intellectually and what we get into our bodies, so to speak, in action. I talk a little bit about it in the book, but there's a disparity or there's at least a gap or a pause between, oh, I know I should eat more vegetables like all of us know, or your mom told you when you're 5, versus eating vegetables or whatever that comes to and actually doing it. And I think if we can find productive ways, constructive ways, and I think meditation is a great way, just as an example, to get us to get a moment to start incorporating little by little between the knowledge or the intellect of what we maybe know into the wisdom of actually utilizing it and using the tools to enable ourselves to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Completely agree. Becoming aware of the solution, as you mentioned.
Becoming aware. And that's, like I said, that's what that's the meaning of the word meditation. It doesn't mean to zen out somewhere or go to some obscure place and do God knows what. This is something you do in the privacy of your own home and your car. You don't need any technology. You just need your own self to close your eyes and maybe some sort of guided something. You don't need any substances or, any
Sure.
shamans or, I'm sure some people can find joy in some of that stuff, but I'm talking about what you do with you with your eyes closed and the sanctity of your own private place, wherever that is, and reap the exponential benefits to enable everything we talked about, to run our businesses, to drive sales, to manage expenses and get more customers, build deeper relationships. And at the end of the day, there's a science to success, but fulfillment is truly an art. And there's no failure greater than being successful and being unhappy in my life.
Yeah, for sure. Love that. Do you have a, you know, failure that you've been through, maybe a lesson or two that you gained from it, and
How much time do you have?
or maybe if there's one failure that you could change what you did, what would that be?
That's very powerful. I appreciate that. I truly believe problems are the gifts that we grow from. It took me a long time to really understand that. That meaning changing what I thought was a problem as negative and turning it into a challenge, turning it into an opportunity. And by no means am I incredible at this. It's definitely a journey, but that's why I try to look at it from now. I'm certainly someone that doesn't have a rear view mirror. If that makes any sense.
Sure.
I'm all about moving forward and clearly taking the time to have some introspection to learn those lessons, sure. But I'm a big, big, big believer in this point in my life in health and wellness, physically and emotionally. Because if I don't feel good and my brain is all funky, I'm useless in my, where as a father, as a CEO, as a friend, as a partner, as an investor. And so I like to look at what I can control. And when shit is falling apart or things have been falling apart, finding a constructive way to eat something wholesome, move my body vigorously, do something for my own mental, spiritual practice, whatever that is, whatever your faith or belief is, in looking at those pillars, that mental, physical, spiritual, and finding something every single day to water those roots, to refine them, to get them, because it's the enablement, the cornerstone that unlocks all the keys of everything else. And it's something you can control, and you all know in your own journey where that is. You don't need to run an ultra marathon. You don't need to be gluten, dairy free, like you can find something where you're focusing on those pillars. And I think the benefits and the investment, the returns, for lack of a better term, from that will be greater than anything you could possibly do shows up on a balance sheet.
Yeah, love that. I think a lot of business owners miss it, right? And there are days that I absolutely have, full days, and I miss it for myself, right?
We all
Guilt.
do. And
We
you
all
can be
do.
human. You're allowed to be human. That's the other
Sure.
part of, this is not about perfection. This is a practice. And I think that's a very important thing. It also doesn't help to beat yourself up and say, oh, I screwed this up again and I ordered another pizza and I'm drinking sodas or whatever this is about progress. I don't believe in
Yep.
perfection. Perfection is a lie. Perfection is a fucking lie. Progress is the point. And only you know where progress really is for you. That if you can measure and you're making progress, whether it's a millimeter, a yard, or 50 miles, I think you're on the right track if you're making progress. And progress isn't linear. Progress is 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 5 steps forward, 3 steps, it's like this, the market. You watch the market, it's going like this, but if you zoom out 20 years, it's going like that. And I think
Yep.
that's the takeaway.
Love that too. Highly recommend that my audience, rewind that and really evaluate it for yourself, right? Be honest. Where have you been?
Be
Not
honest.
just, yeah, not
And
just
do it for
today.
you. We're not trying to, this is not to watch some influencer that has some six-pack abs and then you say, well, no. This is a personal experience between you and you. Be honest with yourself. Set yourself I believe in small goals because small hinges swing big doors. Find something for you. Look at what it is where you are in your journey and just say to yourself, if I did this, would that be progress for me? And if the answer is yes, start there. And the next day, ask yourself, if I did this, would this be progress? And as long as the answer is yes, regardless of the quantitative mechanics, I'd like to say you're on the right path.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. I mean, just being honest and small improvements every day. Super, super important. Just knowing where you're at and knowing what
Yeah,
you need to do
small,
to get better.
like I said, small things compounded. Look at, 7% return compounded over 1 or 2 years. Okay, over 50 years,
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Love that. Well, Ari, I want to give you the opportunity as we, wrap up here. Where is the best place for my audience to connect with you? Obviously, pick up the book, The Gift of Failure. Highly, highly recommend that. But a couple of kind of links for them and places that they can connect with you.
Absolutely. So, Rastegar Capital is the name of the firm. You can go to rastegarcapital.com. We're pretty active on a lot of the various networks from LinkedIn, and you can find us pretty easily if you try. I'd like to believe our team is very responsive. We help investors from all different walks of life, from public pension plans to hardworking people from all over the world, quite frankly. And we do real estate development as our core business and private equity, although there's other things that we work on as well. And if you're looking to, take hold of your future in those things and we can help you, we'd sure love to hear from you, and we'd be happy to if we could.
Awesome. Ari, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, everybody, go accelerate your profits. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Net Profit Podcast with Ryan Kimler. Make sure to subscribe or follow the show on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget to check the show notes for our guest contact information and to connect with Ryan on his website, netprofitcfo.com.